Well, as we've been sharing this morning, a lot of you are going to continue buying Canadian. Grace Martel, just to reiterate here, wrote in saying, no matter of the outcome of the tariffs in 2025, for me, no more Starbucks, she writes, no U.S. food chains, no ordering from the U.S., local and Canadian as much as possible. That's just one sample of the comments that have been coming in this morning in Manitoba. Well, let's lean into the Buy Canadian movement and where it's at and how it's shifted because of what has been happening politically with the states. We have retail analyst Bruce Winder with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So what is your thought on where the movement is right now? Because in recent days, obviously growing enthusiasm, as you've heard here in Manitoba, some people saying they're still going to keep going with this. How do you see the pause on tariffs and what it might mean for that movement?
I think for the most part, the movement is going to continue. You know, some people might sort of back off a little bit, but I think for the most part, it's going to continue. I mean, we're not out of the woods yet. We only bought a month. We did a lot of stuff just to buy a month. So, you know, this could get a lot worse. So I think Canadians are awakened now, and we all realize we have to get behind our country.
Does it really make a difference? I think some Canadians, might be thinking, okay, so I'm making this choice at the grocery store. What does it take for a movement like this to really make it be heard?
Well, I think let's face it. I mean, we're a small economy versus the U.S., so we're not going to cripple the U.S. economy, but we're going to be a bit of a thorn in the side to some companies in the U.S. that sell into Canada. They're going to feel it a little bit. They're going to take notice, and maybe they'll put some pressure on the Trump administration to do things different.
From the retail point of view, what's the reaction been on that side? Are retailers, do you think, going to change some of how they market their products and position themselves maybe overtly as, hey, guess what, we are Canadian?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think retailers, we've already seen clips of companies putting shelf signs for Canadian product. I know Loblaw CEO came out on the weekend and did a post saying where they're going to proactively try to source even more of their products from Canadian suppliers. So I think that, Amazon, I think, is working on some things too. And they have, thousands of Canadian suppliers as well. So I think whoever you are, whether you're Canadian or American, you're trying to highlight the fact that you have Canadian companies in your supply chain, Canadian workers you're helping. And that's really what retailers are doing right now.
Can you outline sort of, during the pandemic, of course, we had the Buy Local movement, which gained a lot of momentum. How is Buy Canadian different?
A little different in the scope and magnitude. During the pandemic, Buy Local was mostly, okay, buy from a small company in my neighborhood. Now we're looking at Canadian, supporting Canadian companies, whether they're small, medium, or large, and also supporting companies coast to coast, right? So I think the magnitude is a lot bigger this time around.
What's the hardest for us to buy Canadian? What are people going to run into if they start to, pay attention to their purchasing habits?
I think, they're going to realize that it's not as cut and dry as they might think. So 50, 60 years ago, it was very cut and dry. You're either a Canadian or an American company. Now with NAFTA and CUSMA and globalization, all of the country supply chains are intertwined. So you might find that, a product might be Canadian, but it uses U.S. ingredients. Or it's an American company, but they make it in Canada. So I think the best bet for people is to try to find out what's made in Canada, processed in Canada, et cetera. That's probably your best bet.
What are people going to realize about cost overall if they do make the shift?
Yeah, in some cases, the Canadian items will be more expensive. In some cases, they're going to be cheaper. So it's going to be sort of hit or miss. And I think everyone realizes, look, for some people, they might not be able to afford to buy, Canadian. So I think everyone is just doing what they can based on their budget.
Can you help us logically understand why something made in a country that we're purchasing it in will be more expensive?
Yeah, if we're purchasing it in the country, it all depends. If you're going to buy something in Canada, Canada has higher labor costs. Canada has more regulation. Canada has higher geographical dispersion. Canada has less population density. So it's more expensive to do business in Canada and to run a Canadian company than it is in America, say as an example.
Yeah. Do you think that some people are also writing in on the thread that I was reading from, a lot of Manitobans engaging, as you can imagine, all Canadians are in this. But some people are saying, let's remind ourselves that it's not just about buying Canadian, but it's about buying other than, about not buying American. You can buy other countries. Are you noticing that also, where people are talking about when they're looking at where they're going to support?
Not really. I haven't seen that. It's an interesting point, interesting comment. But I think a lot of folks are just using this as an example, as a moment to try to sort of switch from America to Canada. And I haven't seen a lot about other countries, but it's a fair point.
Well, what will you be watching most closely with the movement to buy Canadian as the negotiations then continue? And of course, we have this 30-day pause.
I'll be watching what other countries do. So, an example, China put tariffs on the US last night. I'll be watching Mexico's reaction and negotiation. I'll be watching President Trump. I'll be watching our prime minister and their office, and also watching key economic indicators like inflation, unemployment, GDP growth, and things like that.
Anything to add that I haven't asked you about, Bruce? Is this an evolving target, this conversation?
No, I just hope the worst is over, but I have a feeling it's not.
Thanks very much for being with us this morning.
Yeah, no problem. Take care.
You too. Via Zoom, that's Bruce Winder, retail analyst.